Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So we officially have brand new information that has now officially just been released, but specifically, essentially, there is a new report, also specifically called the CPI report. If you're not familiar with what that is that it's pretty much a report that stands for CPI, Consumer Price Index, and it's pretty much just a report that comes out every single month in order to just show how the country is doing as a whole, but even more specifically, economically. This is the report that everyone essentially waits for if they really want to learn about how the country is doing economically, things related to prices, inflation, but probably even more so why this one is particularly important is because this is essentially the report where a lot of people, long story short, is they don't expect it to be very, very great. But a lot of the stuff that we're currently doing right now, things such as related to stimulus checks, programs, definitely anything related to the gas checks that we've talked about, it's going to be relevant to this. So in today's update, what I really just want to talk about is the brand new information that was just released about that report. And then I also want to talk maybe about the significance of this. And then we do actually also have just new information to share about things related to the premise of basically everything that we do, and that is the fourth stimulus checks. So hopefully there's still something new, even if you've already seen a video, hopefully by the end there's still something unique to get out of this. So we're going to get started, but as always, real fast, the same exact drill, 10 really quick seconds. If you guys are around, consider smashing the like button. If you guys hopefully enjoy videos like this, consider subscribing, hitting the bell as we get more information, especially as we learn more about what they actually do with the new information that we now have officially learned. And then as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, or maybe predictions, or honestly just really anything. It's always great to say hi to new and familiar faces. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So as just mentioned, is that the brand new information that was just released is that the CPI report has officially now come out. Long story short about it is that it was not very good. However, with that being said, is I don't believe that most people predicted or foresighted to be very good in general, but it was definitely even, like, let's just say, is that people did not think it was good, and it was actually even worse than people already thought. But the big idea really is that the new report came out right here, where they essentially found that the inflation situation rose by about 8.5%. And for maybe just general perspective is that this is the first time in the brand new record where we've seen inflation hit that number since probably around 1981. So essentially this is a story that we haven't seen these numbers in over 40 years. Many people believe that this was probably largely due to a lot of the increased prices from everything related to things like increased cost of food, energy, shelter, bills, everything in that world. Of course, definitely gas or anything in that. Definitely feel free to share if you guys have any particular stories related to that. And the even more wild thing is that because many people had already predicted that it was going to be bad, but now we officially have information about what the numbers are, and they were just actually even worse than what people originally thought. So in other words, the bad of the bad. That pretty much is the situation that we're currently in. Now, in terms of why this is actually maybe particularly important to us, or why we should particularly care, is that because the significance about why this is actually really problematic right now is because if we start to see inflation go up even further, it's going to now continue to drive up the prices even further, which also means that it's going to be very difficult for pretty much every single person, regardless of whether you are someone that's going through some kind of financial tightness. Actually, definitely if you're going through financial tightness, but even if you are someone that actually is making a lot of money, this is still going to be impactful, because what this really means is that imagine everything that you're currently buying right now in your daily life, whether this is like your necessities, so from things like food, shelter, water, everything like that, to even things maybe there's for pleasure, things like entertainment, drinks, alcohol, anything in that world. The big idea is that what this really means is that now imagine everything that you bought now having to pay about 8% more for that particular something. So in other words, if you are in New York City, which is where I'm currently from, our tax rate is already about, well, sales tax specifically, because there's many different kinds of taxes, but our sales tax is already right around 8.875%. So what this means is that if the inflation continues to rise at this current rate, it basically means that for people in New York, we are now essentially paying taxes 2 times on everything that we buy. Now, if you're maybe thankfully from a state that is maybe very cheap when it comes to things related to taxes, then what this actually means is that now everything that we basically buy there is also going to cost about 8% greater. So the big idea really is why this is important is that because it means that it's going to be even more problematic, because not only things going to be more expensive, but it means also is that regardless of whether we do or don't, now hopefully we do, and there's already a lot of talks about fourth stimulus checks, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But what it does mean is that even if we are able to receive stimulus checks, it means that the checks or the money that we currently receive, regardless whether this comes from checks, whether this comes from a donation, whether we actually do end up finding work, a job, whatever it is, it means that that amount of money, it doesn't have as much value or cannot go as further as it once did because everything now is so much more expensive that now basically money just goes. Now, another thing that they also found that was very, very interesting, and again, why this is also even more problematic, is that because while it is true that things are obviously costing a lot more, they did also find that according to a lot of new data, that the average salary has actually increased by about 5.6%. So what this really tells you is that even though things are costing more money, it does mean that people are also making more money. But it's still actually a very, very sad and actually a very, very bad thing in general, because what it means is that even though people are making more money, they are not making significantly enough more money to be able to cover the increased cost. And it's also a little bit misleading also because that increase that many people are now seeing where they're, making 5.6% greater, it also applies to a lot of people, especially if they're looking for a new job or if they're getting a promotion. But for a lot of people that have been essentially working the same exact job, this is especially true with a lot of business owners where maybe they're just, kind of on like a cruise control kind of situation, where it's not necessarily growing, but it's not necessarily slowing. It's just been, very, very static, very, very stable, very, very consistent, which is a very good thing. But the problem is that because, as mentioned, is that because prices are going up, it means that because of that reason, things, long story short, is that they're just not keeping up with what we really need it to be. And it can be very, very difficult. And of course, definitely if people are unemployed, but even for people that are employed, it is still a very, very difficult thing. And that's why I think in a lot of past videos is that we've made a lot of videos where we talk a lot of times about why it's really, really important not just to try to find a job, of course that's very, very important for people that are unemployed, but also to try to find a good quality of job. Because at the end of the day, as much as we want to find work, there is still also a lot of things that go on beyond work. Things like quality of life, financial, lifestyle, time, environment, everything was social, everything related to that world. And that's one of the things that we really, really try to do here. Now, when it comes to now maybe moving on to the world of the fourth stimulus checks, so that's basically what the basis of everything that we talk about is built around, is that the really, really great news is that according to a lot of articles that recently came out, and actually according to Biden's word even, so for example right here, it was actually recently announced that President Biden is now still officially trying to continue to press to do more stimulus checks, but even more specifically, more funding, or just simply put, more stimulus money for all sorts of different social programs. The big idea, what's really happening right now is that he currently wants to try to create a brand new stimulus package in order to try to bring out or to provide more money and relief in order to do more programs. However, the biggest discussion that they currently have right now is not necessarily about trying to get the money to come out, but also more about what they actually want to do with the money. That because we're currently facing, because there is currently a situation related to inflation, one of the biggest things that they have to really be careful about now is that they can spend more money in order to, again, do different programs, but they have to be a lot more picky in particular now about what they spend, because money is starting to get very, very scarce. That's one of the biggest things about it, or certainly compared to what it once was about like 1 or 2 years ago during the start of the pandemic, when basically we had the liberty of being able to just print lots of money to do all sorts of different stimulus programs and packages, whether that was from checks to unemployment to Social Security and everything in that world. But the big idea to what's really happening is that President Biden pretty much is that there's no doubt about it, is that he wants to try to approve of another stimulus package, but a specific part of that package is that he wants to provide government and local aid in order to give a lot of states and in order to give the country as a whole more money so that they can use that money to combat things related to the pandemic, because again, there are still, the pandemic is still a thing. It's not as big as it once was, but it's definitely still a thing, and it's actually very, very big if you leave the country. In America, it's starting to level off a little bit, but if you go to a lot of other foreign countries and follow international news, there are still countries that are locked down. There are still countries that are going through a lot of different things related to the pandemic. So what he really wants to do is that he wants to try to approve a new package to maybe use that money as the final finishing touches to hopefully now finally close out everything that has been, maybe not everything, because again, the pandemic is going to be a while, but certainly many, many things that we were already going through throughout the last 2 years, to finally put like a conclusion or a closing touch to it. And one of this is to provide states with money to give them the option to decide what they physically want to do with it. And of course, as we know from a lot of past videos now, is that things related to checks, but especially things like gas checks, Social Security relief, all of that money, that is definitely still very, very much on the table, which I think is the very, very great news, and it's much needed for a lot of people. But of course, beyond this we just have to see what happens going forward from here. So with that being said, that's pretty much just what I really wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys made it this far, huge thanks for watching all the way through. Hopefully you guys found something insightful. Maybe as always, if you guys haven't done so, consider smashing the like button, because it is always greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing, hitting the bell. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about honestly anything. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well,